When you withdraw into silence, the narcissist experiences something far more threatening than a simple lack of communication. It is the loss of control. Their identity, fragile and constructed on shaky ground, depends on a constant stream of attention and reaction from others. Every word you speak, every defense you make, every emotional rise or fall you display becomes fuel for their ego. Whether it is admiration or anger, praise or protest, it feeds them. In the psychological framework of narcissism, your voice becomes a lifeline to their sense of superiority. When you cut that lifeline, even without saying a word, you are tearing at the very foundation of their constructed self. This silence hits like a shock wave. It is not just an absence. It is a confrontation. It reflects back to them the uncomfortable truth they cannot bear. That they are not in control, that their grip on your mind and emotions has loosened. And because they have built their entire existence on control, your quietness feels like chaos. It unsettles their psyche in a way that no argument ever could. Arguments they can twist, manipulate, and use to reaffirm their importance. Silence, however, denies them that. It strips them of their tools. It forces them into the void they have spent a lifetime running from. Carl Jung once suggested that what we avoid facing within ourselves has the greatest power over us. For the narcissist, what they avoid is their inner emptiness, the unbearable awareness of being unworthy, insignificant, and disconnected from authentic selfhood. Your silence pushes them toward that abyss. It deprives them of distraction. And suddenly, they are standing at the edge of their own shadow, terrified of what lies within. Think of it like a stage performance. The narcissist thrives under the spotlight, playing their role, extracting applause, criticism, or any acknowledgement from the audience. Your silence is the moment the lights go dark and the audience walks away. There is no script that works anymore. No grand gestures or cutting words that land. They are left performing to an empty room, exposed to the hollowness of their act. And the more they try to demand attention, the more evident their desperation becomes. This is why your silence carries such profound power. It is not passivity, it is active resistance. It communicates without words that you no longer accept the role assigned to you in their play. You are no longer participating in the cycle that sustained their illusion. In that instant, you reclaim something they cannot tolerate: your autonomy. But here lies the paradox. While your silence liberates you, it destabilizes them. It sets in motion the stages of collapse that follow. First shock, then rage, then the desperate attempts to pull you back in. Each reaction is a symptom of their crumbling facade. Each outburst is evidence that your quiet choice to withhold reaction has struck deeper than any confrontation ever could. And so, the lesson becomes clear. The most powerful statement you may ever make to a narcissist is the one you never voice aloud. It is the silence that forces them to face themselves. And for many, that is the one truth they are most unequipped to endure. In the end, your silence is not just the absence of words. It is the presence of strength. When the initial shock of your silence begins to settle in, the narcissist's reaction quickly transforms into rage. But this rage is not the kind of righteous anger that seeks justice or clarity. It is the desperate thrashing of a wounded ego that cannot tolerate being deprived of its supply. Your silence strips away their sense of control, and what follows is an eruption that often takes place behind closed doors, away from the public eye. It is in this private storm that the narcissist reveals just how fragile their inner world truly is. At the root of this fury is a deep psychological truth. Anger is often the mask that covers fear. For the narcissist, the fear is abandonment, irrelevance, and the collapse of their carefully maintained identity. When you refuse to engage, you ignite this fear, and in their attempt to escape it, they lash out with explosive emotion. They may slam doors, send cruel messages, or launch into monologues designed to provoke you. And yet, every one of these outbursts carries the same hidden plea. See me, notice me, don't erase me. Their rage is less about you and more about the unbearable possibility that you no longer orbit around their ego. Carl Jung often spoke of the shadow, the part of the psyche that we deny, suppress, or bury because it threatens the image we hold of ourselves. For the narcissist, rage is the shadow breaking through the cracks. They present themselves as powerful, superior, untouchable, yet the fury that erupts when you go silent betrays the truth. It exposes a childlike dependence on validation, a soul that has not developed the resilience to stand on its own. The rage is, in essence, a mirror reflecting their weakness, though they would never admit it. What makes this stage particularly dangerous is its volatility. The narcissist may attempt to provoke you into breaking your silence, because if you respond, even in anger, you are feeding their ego once again. They may say outrageous things, twist narratives, or even attempt to shame you into reacting. But here is the paradox. Their attempts to regain control only highlight the fact that they have lost it. Each act of rage becomes further evidence that they are unraveling. For you, understanding this stage is crucial. It teaches that their anger is not proof of your wrongdoing, but confirmation of your power. Silence acts like a psychological lever, tilting the balance of control away from them. And the narcissist's rage, though loud and intimidating, is ultimately hollow. It is a storm without substance, meant to conceal the vulnerability that lies beneath. If you can hold steady in this moment, resisting the temptation to defend or explain yourself, you force them to confront their own lack of power. That confrontation is deeply unsettling for them, but it is profoundly liberating for you. It is the point where you realize that peace does not come from matching their chaos. It comes from refusing to participate in it. And so, their rage becomes the loudest evidence of your quiet strength. Once the storm of rage has burned through its intensity, the narcissist is confronted with an even more unsettling reality. Anger has failed to bring you back. And this is where a dramatic shift occurs. The very person who moments ago erupted with hostility may suddenly appear gentle, repentant, or even affectionate. This is not because they have changed, but because their survival instincts are now guiding them toward a different strategy, the desperate attempt to reconnect. In psychological terms, this shift is an act of preservation. The narcissist identity is not rooted in an authentic sense of self, but in the reactions and energy of others. When those sources begin to dry up, the fear of abandonment pushes them to deploy whatever tactics they believe will restore the flow of validation. Love, bombing, tearful apologies, exaggerated displays of vulnerability. All of these may surface as tools of manipulation. The narcissist is not seeking genuine connection. They are seeking supply. And the silence you've maintained threatens to sever them from it completely. This stage is particularly deceptive because it appeals to the part of you that longs to believe the cycle can finally break. Their sudden kindness or vulnerability may feel like proof that change is possible, that they have finally recognized their behavior and are ready to do better. Yet, viewed through a Jungian lens, this is simply another mask of the persona, a facade constructed to achieve an outcome, not to express truth. The sincerity you hope to see is not what is being offered. Instead, it is a performance designed to test whether you will once again surrender your silence and step back into their orbit. At the heart of this stage lies the narcissist's terror of insignificance. They cannot stand to feel invisible, and so they will oscillate between tactics, trying whichever angle they believe will work. One moment it may be pity, painting themselves as the victim who needs your compassion. The next, it may be flattery, showering you with praise to reignite old emotional bonds. And when those fail, they may even circle back to hostility, proving the cycle was never broken at all. Each attempt is evidence of their desperation, not of their growth. For you, the lesson in this stage is profound. It is here that silence becomes not only a boundary, but also a mirror. It reflects back to the narcissist that their control is slipping, while also showing you the depth of their dependency on your energy. To remain silent in the face of their pleas is to affirm that you are no longer swayed by the illusion of transformation. It is to choose reality over performance, truth over hope. And though this moment can feel heavy with temptation, it is also where your greatest clarity emerges. You begin to see that real connection requires authenticity, not manipulation. Genuine love is steady, consistent, and rooted in respect. Anything else is merely another act in the play. When you refuse to be pulled back by their performance, you affirm something greater. Your life is no longer a stage for someone else's survival. After the frantic attempts to win back your attention begin to fail, the narcissist is left standing in a place they have worked their entire lives to avoid: the quiet confrontation with themselves. This stage is not loud, nor is it theatrical. It is not filled with rage or grand gestures. Instead, it is defined by a sinking weight, the collapse into insecurity. And though they will fight to hide it, this is the moment where the cracks in their carefully crafted mask grow wider, and the emptiness within them begins to spill into the open. Silence does more than deny them control. It forces them to encounter the shadow they spend their lives projecting onto others. In Jungian thought, the shadow is that hidden realm of the psyche where we bury our inadequacies, our fears, and the truths we refuse to face. For the narcissist, that shadow is filled with shame. They have built an identity on superiority, but beneath it lies a deep conviction of unworthiness. Your silence becomes a mirror, reflecting not who they pretend to be, but who they truly are without an audience. It is here that their confidence falters. Their once grandiose words lose force. Their manipulations lack edge, and a kind of exhaustion sets in. They may not admit it, but internally, they are grappling with a gnawing awareness that the persona they crafted cannot sustain them without constant reinforcement. In that quiet space you've created, they begin to feel the hollowness of their existence, the fragility of their self-worth, the loneliness of their illusions, the unbearable thought that they might not matter at all. This collapse into insecurity is often expressed through subtle shifts. They may retreat, withdraw from those around them, or display unusual vulnerability. At times, they may even seem small, almost childlike, as if the armor of arrogance has been stripped away. But this vulnerability is not the same as authenticity. It is not the breakthrough into healing that many would hope for. Rather, it is the exposure of the very wound they spend their lives trying to hide. They do not know how to integrate it, how to make peace with it. Instead, they oscillate between glimpses of despair and desperate attempts to reassemble their mask. For you, this stage is revealing. It shows you that beneath all the manipulation and control lies a person deeply afraid of themselves. Their collapse into insecurity is not your burden to fix. It is their truth to face. And while compassion may tempt you, silence remains your most powerful boundary. It protects you from being pulled back into their cycle, while giving them the only chance they will ever have to confront their own shadow. Whether they choose to or not is no longer in your hands. The great paradox is this: your silence, which they once saw as abandonment, is in reality the only authentic mirror they have ever faced. And though it destabilizes them, it also carries within it the potential for their awakening, if they are willing to endure the discomfort of truth. But whether they awaken or remain trapped in illusion, remember this: their collapse is not your responsibility, and your silence is not cruelty. It is freedom. When insecurity begins to surface, the narcissist finds themselves in dangerous psychological territory. To acknowledge their weakness would require humility, self-reflection, and an acceptance of responsibility, things their fragile ego is not built to endure. So instead of turning inward, they turn outward. They project. They twist the story. They manufacture a new narrative where the blame belongs to you, or to someone else, never to themselves. Projection becomes their shield, their way of deflecting the unbearable truth that their collapse is a direct result of their own actions. This is not a conscious choice, so much as an instinctive defense mechanism. In Jung's framework, projection is the act of casting the disowned parts of ourselves onto others, because facing them directly would shatter the image we want to preserve. For the narcissist, this is magnified 100-fold. They cannot integrate their shadow, so they paint you with it. If they feel powerless, suddenly you are accused of being controlling. If they feel insecure, suddenly you are the one who is weak. If they feel abandoned, suddenly you are labeled heartless, cold, or cruel. In their distorted view, you become the villain in a story designed to protect their pride. This stage often manifests through gossip, smear campaigns, or subtle narratives they spread to anyone who will listen. They may confide in mutual friends, twisting events so that you appear unreasonable or unstable. They may present themselves as the victim, claiming they tried everything while you just walked away. On the surface, these tactics are attempts to preserve their image in the eyes of others. But beneath it, they are frantic efforts to avoid seeing themselves clearly. Because if the world believes their version of events, then perhaps they can believe it too. For you, this stage can feel deeply unjust, to be misrepresented. To have your silence reframed as cruelty can tempt you to break that silence and defend yourself. But here lies the danger. Engaging with their projections only pulls you back into the cycle. It gives life to the false narrative, as if it deserves debate. Silence here is not passive. It is a conscious refusal to participate in the theater of blame. It is a declaration that you will not carry the weight of their shadow on your shoulders. What is crucial to understand is that projection reveals more about the narcissist than it does about you. Every accusation, every twisted story is an echo of what they cannot face within themselves. If you can see this clearly, you begin to recognize that their words are not truths, but reflections of their inner chaos. And in that recognition, you free yourself from the need to defend against what was never truly yours to carry. It is often said that truth does not need to shout, it stands quietly, and in time, it becomes undeniable. The narcissist's projections may distort reality for a season, but eventually, the inconsistency of their narrative betrays them. Lies collapse under their own weight, and when they do, the silence you maintained becomes proof of your strength. Their projections may paint you as the villain, but in reality, they are only revealing the war within themselves. To see this clearly is to reclaim your power and to know that truth requires no defense. As the cycle unfolds, there comes a stage where even projection loses its power. The narcissist, having exhausted anger, manipulation, and blame, begins to face the one reality they fear above all else: isolation. This is the inevitable outcome when their tactics no longer produce the reactions they once relied upon. People grow weary of the constant drama, of the shifting narratives, of the endless need for control. And without someone to perform for, the narcissist finds themselves standing in silence. Only this time, it is not the silence you chose, but the silence that surrounds them when others turn away. Isolation for the narcissist is not simply loneliness in the ordinary sense. It is existential. Their identity depends on an audience, on the constant reflection of themselves in the eyes of others. Without that, they are forced to confront the unbearable void they have spent their lives masking. Jung observed that isolation can either destroy a person or lead them inward toward transformation, depending on whether they are willing to engage with the truth of their own shadow. For the narcissist, however, this confrontation often feels like annihilation. Without admiration, without conflict, without someone to manipulate, they are stripped of the scaffolding that held their fragile self-image together. This is where the collapse reaches its deepest point. The narcissist may retreat into further bitterness, convinced that the world has betrayed them, or they may spiral into self-pity, searching for anyone who will temporarily ease the weight of their solitude. But more often than not, their attempts fall short, because the pattern has revealed itself too many times. Even those who once defended them begin to distance themselves, recognizing the cost of staying close. In their isolation, the narcissist is forced to face what they fear most: the truth that without others to prop up their illusion, they do not know who they are. For you, understanding this stage is critical. It shows you the full arc of what happens when you choose silence. What begins as a shock moves through rage, manipulation, Insecurity and projection ultimately leads here to isolation. And while their collapse may be painful to witness, it is not yours to repair. To step back in, to rescue, would only restart the cycle. Your silence, consistent and unwavering, is what allows the truth of their condition to surface. Whether they use this isolation as an opportunity for genuine growth or as an excuse to sink deeper into denial is beyond your control. What matters is that you have stepped out of the role that kept the cycle alive. There is a profound liberation in recognizing this. Isolation may feel like their punishment, but in reality, it is your freedom. It is the confirmation that you no longer revolve around their chaos, that your life is no longer dictated by their need for control. And in that space, you reclaim something essential, the ability to live by your own truth, unshaken by the illusions of another. Their isolation is the collapse of their illusion. Your silence is the rise of your strength.